I started using drugs when I was 13 years old. I started with pot, like most people probably do, alcohol, cigarettes, and eventually moved up to methamphetamine and went on to cocaine and eventually ended up on heroin.
I did not have a life. I mean, I owned a multi-million-dollar advertising firm and I couldn't function.
My husband packed the children and left. I had no idea where they were, but none of that mattered. All that mattered was smoking crack.
And my parents, brother and sisters are just baffled. You know, how can somebody that supposedly has so much be so miserable and keep throwing his life away?
And I remember my mother saying to me one day, "You're going to die if you don't get help." I wanted to have my life back and my family back. And that's when my mother found Narconon.
If you or someone you love has a drug or alcohol problem, call Narconon Arrowhead today at 1-800-468-6933.
When my family found out I was on drugs, they were devastated.
It was killing them, you know, it was killing them.
It tears your family up more than it does you.
You want to stop, you know, in your heart you need to stop.
My mom was just a nervous wreck. I could just see her getting older way too fast.
My oldest brother banned me from the house. "You're a drug addict, I don't want you around my kids."
I just couldn't help it. I couldn't get a grip on it. I couldn't even stay clean to get my son back.
It doesn't matter if it's Monday at 10 in the morning or if it's Sunday at 2 in the morning. You got to go get drugs or money, one or the other.
You pray to God, please help me quit this, stop this.
My dad was frantic, and he looked at me and he said, "We're not going to gamble with your life."
I wanted to have my family back. And that's when my mother found Narconon.
If you or someone you love has a drug or alcohol problem, call Narconon today at 1-800-468-6933.
When I found out my son was on drugs, it was total disbelief.
I said, "Oh, Ma, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying?" And she'd look at me and she'd say, "Because I'm watching you die, and I don't know what to do about it."
My dad would look at me and he would cry.
What do I do? Do I put her in jail or do I buy our tombstone?
You lie to your family, you lie to your children, you lie to your mom and dad.
The only thing that mattered was getting crack, and that was it. There wasn't anything else.
Heroin had taken over my life.
Nobody except for my mother would have anything to do with me the last couple years.
My mom was just a nervous wreck. I just put her through hell.
It's a nightmare that you never wake up from.
And I remember my mother saying to me one day, "You're going to die if you don't get help." I wanted to have my family back. And that's when my mother found Narconon.
If you or someone you love has a drug or alcohol problem, call Narconon today at 1-800-468-6933.
The telephone. It's always the telephone. You never know. Is this going to be another disaster?
Drugs were the #1 priority in my life.
I was basically just doing drugs waiting to die.
I looked like a walking skeleton. She went out for a pack of cigarettes, was gone for over 3 days.
You blame yourself, you blame each other.
They probably would have been relieved if I had died or gone to prison.
The cravings were so horrific that nothing else mattered.
You get crazy when you do drugs.
Absolutely had to have it, knowing on the way to get it that I shouldn't do it.
It's a walking death.
And I remember my mother saying to me one day, "You're going to die if you don't get help." I wanted to have my life back and my family back. And that's when my mother found Narconon.
If you or someone you love has a drug or alcohol problem, call Narconon today at 1-800-468-6933.
I had no idea my daughter was taking drugs.
I started smoking pot when I was 14.
At 15, I was on the streets doing whatever I had to do.
My parents never really knew where I was. They thought they did.
Whatever it was he was doing, he didn't want me to know. He didn't want anybody in the family to know.
I already did alcohol and I already knew what pot was about, so why not do cocaine?
I started smoking crack at 15. I took LSD 2-3 times a week.
When my family found out I was on drugs, they were just horrified.
He was not raised to be brought home in handcuffs.
And I remember my mother saying to me, "You're going to die if you don't get help." I wanted to have my family back. And that's when my mother found Narconon.
If you or someone you love has a drug or alcohol problem, Call Narcanon today at 1-800-468-6933.
I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 12 years old. I was bored and I thought drugs would be exciting. I hung out with like the older crowd and just kind of did it socially at first. By the time I was 15, my whole life turned upside down.
I started doing drugs because I was shy. I wanted to fit in. All my friends were using drugs and they looked like they were having a good time.
I thought using drugs was a good way of dealing with stress.
I was insecure about a lot of things. You know, I was pretty shy. My parents must have told me a million times, don't do drugs, you know, they'll ruin your life. Now I know what they all meant.
People often begin using drugs as a solution to a problem. Eventually, the drug use itself becomes a much greater problem.
I can't quit.
I'm addicted. So are my friends.
I'm losing my family.
I can't stop.
I lost my job. I almost lost my life. I need help.
Call Narcanon Arrowhead today at 1-800-468-6933.